Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel of Uncle Bod Dewey's Ghost Stories. I hope everyone has a truly captivating experience listening to ghost stories today. Let's start with today's first story, which serves as an introduction to today's episode. Today, we have a few short stories from a girl from Ben Din. This girl narrates how her ba got married in Ben Din, but both of them worked together and built their careers in Ho Chi Minh City. After the couple married and lived together for about a year, your sister got pregnant. Because it was her first time being pregnant, she didn't have much experience in pregnancy care, so she didn't ask older people about how to eat well. She just searched Google to see how people adjusted their diets. She followed a nutritional regimen, just like what she found online. A part of the reason was that she was busy working and didn't have much time. Throughout that time, your sister Ba was working as well. But by week 15, when she went for her prenatal checkup, the doctor unexpectedly told her that the baby had no heartbeat. At that moment, she was very disheartened because the baby had no heartbeat. Therefore, it was necessary to take the baby out because the baby couldn't survive. That day felt like the sky was falling down for her since she received the news that her child had died, as it couldn't live on. Upon hearing such news, her mother called your sister Ba to say, "Now, arrange to go back home to take the baby out. Don't take it there. Take it here. Then I will have time to care for my child." So that afternoon, your sister Ba and her husband quickly took a bus from Saigon back to Ben Din and went straight to the Quy Nhon hospital to take the baby out. Since the doctor said the baby was still very small, they used medication to help the baby come out naturally rather than using tools to force the baby out. After the baby was taken out, everyone in the family was sad and cried, and they buried the baby very respectfully. However, on the day they buried the baby, your second aunt dreamed that this baby came back and told her on her right side not to bury him in the glass box, but instead in a cardboard box. When she dreamed and heard the baby say that, the second aunt also talked to the family and made everyone dig up the baby to replace it with a cardboard box, because when they first buried the baby, everyone put in a glass box. The family was heartbroken, but eventually let it go. Sometime later, your sister Ba got pregnant again and gave birth to another child. This time, she gave birth to a baby boy. During her pregnancy, your sister Ba didn't go to work anymore and returned home to let her mother take care of her, because she was afraid that something similar to the previous baby would happen again. During that time, Tien, your sister Ba's brother, brought a friend named On Fu to visit. On Fu knew about talismans. The day he came to visit, the moment he stepped into your sister Ba's house, everyone noticed him standing in front of the house, rubbing his hands in the air as if he was patting a child's head. At that moment, everyone found it strange, and he asked everyone in the house if they saw two children's spirits. He was not sure if there were any children who died young in their house. At that time, your family was extremely alarmed because everyone knew that your sister Ba had lost a child. Thus, he only mentioned one child's spirit. Why did he say there were two? On Fu then said he didn't know and decided to call those two children's spirits that night to talk while the family slept, so they shouldn't be curious and peek. That night, everyone in the family slept normally, but On Fu called the two spirits of those babies to ask questions. The next morning, he told the family that there were two children's spirits at home. One was the child of your sister Ba who had died due to no heartbeat, and the other was a child's spirit, but that spirit had been there for a long time. However, he also added that the two spirits were there only to protect and bless, having no ill intentions. Each night, they often gathered in the middle of the house, where the lights were turned off, making it a bit cold. Therefore, from then on, everyone should keep the lights on as much as possible to make it warm. On Fu also mentioned that because your sister's child was still young, their spirit was still weak. When it met children and spirits, it would usually cry and fuss. On Fu stayed at your sister Ba's house for 3 days, and during that time, he also fixed the feng shui of the house and helped your family resolve the impending troubles. Overall, he helped your family a lot. After hearing what On Fu said, your sister Ba understood that her child's spirit still existed in this house. At that moment, she immediately rushed to buy offerings and fruits to go to the baby's grave and pray. She just prayed. If I have a spiritual connection with you, my child, please be reborn as my child once more, or you can bless us. The story of the demon woman for my child. My child is not sick, and do not come back to disturb the baby anymore. After I went outside to pray, my little one stopped crying at all, and at night it sleeps very well, so I no longer have to be tired because of it. A few years later, I also gave birth to another baby girl. At this time, my first child was already 5 years old, and I hoped that this baby girl was the reincarnation of my first child. However, I do not really know whether that baby reincarnated or not. Then comes the story about the jackfruit tree next to my friend's house. My friend's neighborhood only has about 4 or 5 houses. The area next to my friend's house used to be a market, but later on, people remodeled the area, and that market is no longer there. That plot of land has a very tall jackfruit tree. My friend often heard elderly men saying that every time they returned from drinking at night and passed by that jackfruit tree, they often saw a woman sitting in the branches of the jackfruit tree every night. However, my friend didn't see it at all. The climax was during that time when my friend was preparing for the 10th grade entrance exam. That night, my friend studied very hard, sitting in the room until around 12 or 1 a.m., and still hadn't finished. The window was open and looking straight out to the base of the jackfruit tree. One night, while sitting and studying comfortably, suddenly my friend felt the air in the room was stuffy and too hot. So they opened the window to let in some fresh air. As soon as the window opened, right in front of my friend's eyes was that jackfruit tree. My friend saw a woman sitting on the branch of the jackfruit tree. This woman was not young. She was sitting there in a traditional white dress, holding a conical hat, and she kept waving it as if to cool off. Oh my God, that person was looking straight at my friend, and they were so scared that they quickly shut the window with a bang and went to sleep in their mother's room, not daring to sleep in their own room anymore. The next morning, my friend told their mother, saying that the night before, they opened the window and saw someone at the jackfruit tree. Their mother then said that there used to be a market nearby, and my friend knew about this. However, back then in the market, there was a very beautiful girl who unfortunately suffered from asthma. On the day the girl went to the market, she bought some fish, and the fish seller shorted her. The girl got angry, and there was an argument that escalated between them, leading to a conflict. As the girl was arguing, she had an asthma attack. The two of them were very close all the way to the 12th grade, but in reality, life is not like a dream. My friend vividly remembers a fateful morning when at 5 a.m., they received the news from Tone's family that Tone had just passed away, with the cause still unclear. My friend only managed to find out that Tone suddenly collapsed on the hammock. Their house was only about 15 minutes away by motorbike, so that day, my friend hurriedly rushed over to Tone's house to help with the funeral arrangements. To be honest, when they arrived, they were still in shock and couldn't believe it because just the previous night, they were still talking and video calling with each other, and now this morning their boyfriend was gone. Tone passed away on an inauspicious day, and they could not bury him on that day either, so Tone's family waited 5 days to bury him, although he had already been injected with medication. By the 4th or 5th day, everyone noticed Tone starting to bloat and smell. My friend stayed to help with the funeral preparations. On the day of the burial, everyone went home, as my friend and Tone were both good students, so their families did not prohibit them from hanging out together since they knew they were not doing anything inappropriate. On the contrary, Tone's parents were very fond of my friend, treating her like their own daughter. So since the day Tone passed away, my friend often visited Tone's house to comfort his parents. However, on the 49th day after Tone's death, my friend couldn't attend the ceremony because they had to take their final exam for the 2nd semester that day. That night, my friend was extremely exhausted from studying the whole week. They fell asleep at 9 p.m. under the table. While sleeping, they dreamed of Tone standing in front of their room. He stood still, looking very sad, and asked why my friend didn't come to the 49th day ceremony. It felt as if he was blaming them for it. Moreover, he said, "I forgot to tell you one thing. I bought you a silver bracelet and left it in the drawer of my nightstand. You could take it once you come there." My friend was startled and woke up feeling dizzy and had a terrible headache. At that moment, they suddenly missed Tone, so they thought it was probably because they had studied too much and missed him that they had such a dream. The next morning, after finishing the exams, my friend hurriedly ran over to Tone's house to light a stick of incense for him as an apology for missing his 49th day ceremony. However, my friend remembered the dream from the night before. Tone said he'd gifted my friend a silver bracelet, which was in his nightstand. So they asked Tone's mother for permission to go into Tone's room, opened the drawer, and found a small box. Opening it, they saw a silver bracelet with an inscription that read, 3 years of being together. So surely Tone had. The story of the demon woman preparing this gift for you has been a long time in the making. After she went into the room to take out this bracelet, you held it in your hands and recounted everything to his mother, who also cried. That uncle just told that last night he saw it come back and stand in front of the yard. It didn't enter the house, but talked to him, explaining the reason for its departure. It also told him that it probably wouldn't come back anymore. That night you returned home and met him once again. But you said that could be the last time you meet him because he said he was about to leave. You tried to hurry to visit his parents. He went, but he missed you a lot. After a long time, you no longer met him anymore until now. You are already a second-year student, and several years have passed, but you still can't seem to start a new relationship. You think you might take this long time to heal your heart. This is the last story in your part. You would like to tell about your grandmother. Since the beginning, your family and your grandmother have not had a good relationship. In the past, they had arguments over rice fields. Although at that time, everyone had witnesses, your mother and your family were the stronger ones, while your grandmother made a mistake. However, because of that incident, it seemed that your grandmother felt ashamed and turned her back on your mother and refused to recognize her grandchildren. Your grandmother had 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son. That son is your uncle. As for money, your grandmother only gave it to that uncle, not sharing with any of the daughters. Your mother is the only daughter close to your uncle and your grandmother. The other relatives were all married far away and rarely visited. Although your mother's house is near your uncle's and your grandmother lived with him during that time, your grandmother absolutely didn't look at her children or grandchildren, refusing to talk to them at all. Until about 8 years later, when your mother gave birth to you, your grandmother finally began to accept her grandchildren and accept your mother again. The anger was no more. As for your uncle and aunt were very difficult, strict people. Your uncle was stingy, while your aunt, in your words, was just as picky. Even though their house was next to yours, you didn't visit your uncle more than twice a year. Moreover, when they took care of your grandmother, they didn't feed her meat or fish at all, only giving her vegetables and being very stingy with food. They used the excuse that your grandmother had diabetes, so they wouldn't let her eat meat or fish. It's true that she should avoid a lot of sugar, but she also needed nourishing foods like meat and fish. If the elderly only ate vegetables, there wouldn't be enough nutrients to sustain them. Each time your mother saw that, she disagreed strongly and was very upset. However, they didn't allow her to eat much because your grandmother was living in their house. Eventually, seeing such things, your mother couldn't stand it anymore. So occasionally, she would bring your grandmother over to feed her. When she went to your house, she was given brown rice instead of regular rice. Eating brown rice does not provide much starch, but she was well fed with enough meat and fish. Every time she ate rice at your uncle's house, it was tough because there were 4 people eating, but only dividing up 4 pieces of meat for 4 bowls of rice, making it insufficient for your grandmother. This is the reason why your grandmother stayed at your house more than at your uncle's. He noticed this and yelled at her, asking why she kept coming over to eat at your place when their house didn't provide enough food. Each time he said that, you noticed your grandmother cried. You felt very sorry for your grandmother. But now that she is old, she can no longer earn money. She also told your mother to make sure to teach them, the uncle and aunt, that she gave them all her money. But now they keep everything while she's sick and no one takes her to the hospital. You remember once when your grandmother was hospitalized due to a drop in blood sugar. Nobody took her. Your uncle and aunt went on their business, and no one could take her. So you and your older sister took her to the hospital. Your older sister even stayed with her in the hospital. Your mother, being older, couldn't drive to take her grandmother. Your grandmother was admitted at 5 a.m. and didn't see your uncle and aunt until late that evening when they finally arrived at the hospital. They had a look of disdain, telling her that she was old and sick. So what was the point of taking her to the hospital? Just give her a piece of sugar, and it would be fine. Questioning the need to waste money taking her there. When you heard this, you felt really heartbroken. Your grandmother realized who truly took care of her during those days in the hospital. Your grandmother stayed for 7 days in the hospital, and during that time, your uncle and aunt only visited for 2 days, each time staying for just 2 hours. Since they didn't come to take care of her, your family had to take turns caring for her. Your grandmother didn't want the aunties to know because they all had husbands far away. Suddenly, your grandmother suffered a sudden drop in blood sugar when looking for this medication that needed to be bought all the way in Queenon. It was already a challenge since there were social distancing restrictions, making it hard to buy anything. That evening, your mother hurriedly went to ask for passes to go to Queenon to buy those medication vials. After buying a lot of vials, preparing for your grandmother to use in the next 2 or 3 months, when they returned and started giving the injections, they hadn't even injected half a vial when your grandmother passed away. The day she passed, she didn't get to say goodbye to her children. Your aunts also couldn't make it back due to the social distancing restrictions, so they had to video call to say their last goodbyes. At that time, they also invited a monk to come and look at the grave location for your grandmother to see if it would have good feng shui. However, the monk said that when burying your grandmother next to your grandfather's grave, they had to raise your grandfather's grave higher. The grave of the grandfather was too low. If the grave remains this way, your uncle will die without leaving any descendants. However, later your uncle did have a son, but this son was very mischievous and caused a lot of trouble, eventually severing ties with his father. After the funeral and arrangements for your grandmother, your brother, who lives in Saigon, had a dream. In his dream, your grandmother came back and said she liked the new place where she was buried. She said, "This place is good," but she was upset because the portrait of her on the tombstone did not resemble her. She said the face in the portrait looked evil and asked for it to be fixed. Indeed, when the family looked at the portrait, they noticed that it looked very different from your grandmother. So they hurried to correct it. Your mother prayed, hoping to dream of your grandmother, but she never had the chance. On the 21st night after your grandmother's passing, your third aunt was sleeping with her young child when she woke up to see her grandmother. Your grandmother told her to wake up as the pillow was pressing down on the child's face. When your aunt looked at the child, she saw that the pillow was indeed on the child's face, so she quickly moved it. But strangely, the room, which had no air conditioning, felt cold. Later that day, a woman from the neighborhood took a nap and also saw your grandmother. She asked her, "Grandmother, why did you die when you weren't sick?" Your grandmother replied, "I had died to be free. My children don't care about me, so I chose to die peacefully." On the 49th day after your grandmother's passing, almost everyone in the house had seen her. That night, you were looking at old pictures of you and your grandmother, crying. You suddenly fell asleep, and while sleeping, you felt as though someone was pulling at your feet. When you woke up, you couldn't find anything, but you clearly heard your grandmother's voice saying, "Stop looking at your phone. Don't be sad anymore. I'm dead. You need to eat more. You only weigh 38 kilograms." The next day, your mother also saw your grandmother, who told her to tell your uncle to remove the fish tank from the house because there was a spirit trapped inside. Your grandmother warned that if they didn't, someone in the family would die young, and the father and son would bring misfortune to each other. Your grandmother then asked for food to be offered to her regularly, as according to tradition, the deceased should receive offerings on the 49th day and beyond. Your uncle, however, did not offer the food regularly, and your grandmother was hungry. One day, your second aunt saw your grandmother again, and your grandmother told her, "Do you remember me? I've become a bird now, flying freely with no more burdens." After this, your grandmother disappeared, and no one saw her again. Now, a year has passed since your grandmother's death. Your uncle cried a lot, but crying couldn't bring her back. You also mentioned that after your grandfather's grave was raised, your uncle's troublesome son started behaving better and became kinder, and father and son no longer fought. Your grandmother's spirit had a strong presence and continued to look after the family, offering guidance and protection. Now, we move to another chilling story. A story about cannibalism from Cambodia. This story is told by a young man who practices spiritual healing. He explains that the main character of the story is his grandmother. If she were still alive today, she would be over 100 years old. The story happened when she was only 16, many decades ago. Back then, she married your grandfather at the age of 15. A year after their marriage, your grandfather worked as a carpenter in the royal palace of Cambodia. The story begins on the eve of the Cambodian New Year. Your grandmother had planned to visit her uncle's house, which was far, over 100 kilometers away. At that time, getting transportation was very difficult, especially since it was almost 100 years ago. So, she left early in the morning to catch a ride, as traveling was not easy for young girls back then. The old lady on the bus was very happy because the scenery along the road was beautiful. She kept chatting with the other ladies on the bus, and after talking for a while, she accidentally fell asleep on the bus. Although it was an old bus, it still stopped at stations similar to bus stops. Since the old lady had fallen asleep, the bus kept going on, passing the intended stop. According to her estimate, the bus had gone about 30 kilometers before it finally stopped around 5 or 6 p.m., just as it was getting dark. The old lady looked around and saw that the place was very deserted. It wasn't the place she wanted to be. She asked someone and found out she had missed her stop. Looking around, there was no other bus heading back, and she was very worried. She saw that at 5 or 6 p.m., all the houses in the area were locked up, and the soldiers were patrolling very strictly. The whole village was dark, and everyone had gone inside. In the midst of her panic, as if by fate, the old lady saw another elderly woman sitting on the bus. This old lady said, "Why are you so worried, my dear? I noticed you're not from here, right?" The old lady explained that she was heading to her uncle's house in Sim Deep, but had missed the stop because she had fallen asleep. The elderly woman then said, "There are no more buses now. It's too late. Just come to my house and sleep for the night. Tomorrow, there'll be a bus back." The old lady felt relieved and followed the elderly woman to her house. She noticed that the elderly woman was wearing a Khmer sarong and was holding a basket. The old lady felt safe and followed the elderly woman, despite the path being very far. About 4 or 5 kilometers through a rubber tree forest with no houses around, just trees. After a long walk, they finally reached a small hut. The elderly woman said, "We're almost there," but the old lady felt it was still very far. They entered the hut, which was empty, with no furniture, just a simple bed in the middle. The elderly woman explained that she lived alone and sold cakes for a living because she preferred solitude. The old lady and the elderly woman sat down to have a meal together. Afterward, the old lady sat on the bed, swinging her legs. She suddenly felt like someone was reaching from underneath the floor to grab her legs. She was terrified and screamed, but the elderly woman reassured her, saying, "Oh, it's just the cats. Don't worry about it." But the old lady could clearly feel 2 hands grabbing her feet. That night, the elderly woman sat outside, chewing betel nuts, while the old lady struggled to sleep in the strange place. In the middle of the night, the old lady overheard the elderly woman whispering to someone, "I told you to wait. I'll feed you after 2 days, but today you're still not full. You have to wait 2 more days." The old lady was confused, thinking the elderly woman might be talking to some cats eating chicken or dog bones. The next morning, the old lady woke up late, around 5 p.m. She saw the elderly woman carrying a basket of cakes, heading out to sell them. The old lady asked, "Why didn't you wake me up? It's already so late." The elderly woman explained, "I saw you sleeping so peacefully, I didn't want to disturb you. Now, it's evening. Stay with me again tonight, and you can leave tomorrow morning." That night, like the previous one, after they ate dinner, the old lady sat on the bed again, swinging her legs. Suddenly, she felt 2 hands grab her legs, pulling her down. She screamed, "There are hands pulling me." But the elderly woman calmly said, "It's just the cats." She grabbed a lamp and searched under the floor, but couldn't find the cats. Despite her fear, the old lady tried to remain calm. After dinner, she lay down on the bed, while the elderly woman sat outside, chewing betel nuts. The old lady also heard the elderly woman saying, "You all have to wait. Tomorrow I will feed you." At that point, the old lady began to suspect something. That night, the old lady pretended to sleep, but couldn't actually fall asleep. She was afraid and wondered how many more muddy roads she had to cross. In general, it was impossible to distinguish the direction, and it was already late at night. However, with her survival instincts, the old lady managed to find a way out of the house and escape. After running for a while, she reached a small road, and it was almost dawn. The old lady then saw a man driving a bullock cart. When she saw him, she was very happy and cried out for help. "Help me! Help me, sir!" She kept calling, but the man, seeing a shadowy figure running after him, thought she was a ghost and became scared. He quickly sped away, and the more the old lady ran, the faster he ran. After a while, the old lady finally caught up with him. When the man saw her frantic expression, he realized she was a person and not a ghost. After that, they both traveled together to the main road. When they reached the bus stop, the man told the old lady that recently, young girls aged 14 to 18 had been mysteriously disappearing in the area. No one knew who had kidnapped these girls. The old lady also shared her story about the skull she had seen in the house and suspected it was connected to the disappearances. The local tea shop owner, who overheard the conversation, realized the elderly woman might be involved and went to report to the soldiers in the Imperial Army to investigate the case. When the soldiers learned that the old lady had just left the house, they urged her to return and wait until the authorities arrived. They would then follow her to the house. The old lady was known for working in the Imperial Palace, so when the soldiers learned about the situation, they acted quickly. That afternoon, the old lady saw the elderly woman again. However, she didn't know that the old lady had already escaped from the house. The old lady quietly pointed out the woman to the soldiers. "That's the one who lives in that house." The soldiers followed her to the house and saw her sitting, gnawing on the skull the old lady had seen earlier. The soldiers immediately surrounded the house, and after firing a few shots, the woman died on the spot. The soldiers then searched the house, which appeared empty, with nothing inside. However, when they dug under the floor, they uncovered a pile of bones. These bones had been stripped of their flesh, and they were stacked neatly underneath the floor. The old lady was horrified when she saw it. After the woman was dealt with, the case was revealed to be a gruesome and terrifying crime that had occurred in the area many years ago. In the end, the old lady was very fortunate to escape with her life. And our story comes to an end. Before concluding the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel to support us. Now, let's look forward to more amazing episodes. Goodbye, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel BUS+THE Ghost Stories. I hope you all have an exciting time listening to today's ghost story. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel to support us. Now, let's get into the first story of today. This first story is a very intriguing one, related to the exorcism of a ghost by two Buddhist monks in Chowdak and Jom. Before Dewey shares this story with you, I would like to clarify that the authenticity of this story might not be entirely confirmed, as it's only heard from the storytelling of Aunt Hai. But I believe that when older people tell their stories to the younger generation, they rarely make up tales. So it's possible that this is a true story. This story happened a long time ago in the village of my uncle. We call him Ong Ka, not just Ka, because he is from my mother's side. At that time, in my uncle's village, there was a very large banyan tree at the beginning of the village. No one dared to approach that tree because it was a very old banyan tree, and no one had ever dared to chop it down. In general, people avoided it altogether. My uncle never paid much attention to the tree because there hadn't been any strange events around it. However, at that time, the village only had a small cluster of houses, and there weren't many people. One day, while my uncle was at home, he heard back Nam, the village elder, shouting, someone's dead here. Upon hearing the commotion, my uncle and his teacher, Fei Bei, who was his master, decided to go out to see what was happening. They headed toward the village's edge, where the banyan tree was. When they arrived, they saw back Nam shouting, Sao fell and died. As they approached the base of the banyan tree, they found that the man, named Sao, hadn't just fallen or had an accident. Fei Bei said, this man, Sao, he died because he was possessed by Ho, not from falling. When they heard Fei Bei say this, the whole village was scared because there had never been any ghosts or spirits in the village before. Why did this happen to Sao? The reason why the villagers were afraid of Fei Bei's words was that, back then, my uncle and Fei Bei were both highly skilled in exorcising ghosts and spirits. At that moment, while everyone was gathering around the corpse, an old man from a nearby village, just next to theirs, spoke up. He said, please, 2 teachers, help me. Lately, in my house and in the houses nearby, our chickens have been mysteriously disappearing, as if someone is stealing them. I've been keeping an eye on it, but I haven't seen anyone. Now, you're saying that Sao was taken by a ghost. I think this banyan tree has spirits on it. Please help us. When my uncle heard this, he reassured the old man, saying, don't worry, my disciple and I have dedicated ourselves to exorcising evil. If there are ghosts or spirits causing harm, we will get rid of them, even if it costs us our lives. Hearing this, the villagers felt more at ease. They asked, what should we do now, master? Fei Bei responded, I see not 1, but 2 evil spirits on that tree. One is a Chan Tin, a malevolent spirit, and the other is a female ghost, which is actually a much stronger spirit that can transform. It's more dangerous and has sharp fangs. To subdue it won't be easy, but let me think about how to proceed. After thinking for a while, Fei Bei took out 2 yellowed talisman sheets from his bag, inscribed with intricate symbols in cinnabar ink and dog's blood. He handed 1 talisman to each household and instructed everyone. Place the talisman on your front and back doors tonight at 11 p.m. Those of you born in the year of the tiger or dragon will follow me. Others must stay inside the house. And if anyone calls your name, do not open the door or respond. Once Fei Bei finished speaking, everyone nodded and quickly went home to lock their doors, not daring to go outside. A few hours later, it was almost 11 p.m., and the young men born in the year of the tiger and dragon gathered with my uncle and Fei Bei to perform the exorcism. As they set up the ritual outside, the weather was calm, with no wind or rain. However, as they completed the setup, suddenly a gust of wind blew in, cold and eerie, though there was no sign of rain. Fei Bei saw this and said, it's starting. Let me recite the incantation to summon it. As the wind began to howl, one of the young men in the circle got scared by the strange atmosphere and attempted to leave the circle to flee back home. But as soon as he stepped out, something strange happened. He jerked violently and was lifted up, floating about 1 or 2 meters above the ground. He turned around and pointed directly at Fei Bei and my uncle, shouting, tonight, you think you can trap me? I'll kill everyone in this village tonight. The young man, named Su, stood up, responding fiercely, we'd rather die than let you win. We'll fight to the end. At that moment, Fei Bei realized that the second spirit, the female ghost, had taken control of the young man. The malevolent spirit ordered the ghost to attack Su. The 2 monks quickly grabbed their swords, preparing to confront the 2 spirits. They had to leave the ritual circle to fight the spirits because they were outside it. After a fierce struggle, the spirits revealed their true forms. The ghost was surrounded by a red aura, and the Chan Tin had 4 fangs. The young men inside the circle, still watching the scene unfold, were too terrified to even open their eyes. As the battle reached its climax, Fei Bei stood firm, confronting the spirits. He said, you must follow us, learn the way of righteousness, and wait for rebirth. You can't keep causing harm like this. Hearing this, the spirit possessing Su responded, I have to destroy this village because of what you've done tonight. If you try to stop me, I'll make sure everyone here dies. Fei Bei replied, If you continue harming others, your punishment will be worse. Follow me, and you will find peace." Despite this plea, the battle continued, and the two monks, using all their strength and the tools at their disposal, pushed on to subdue these two demons. In the end, Fei Bei only managed to capture the male demon. The female demon, however, was stronger and managed to slip away, escaping. The next morning, the villagers heard from the two teachers that the female demon had gotten away, and they couldn't catch her. Everyone was scared, fearing that it would come back to take revenge. However, at this point, Fei Bei said, "I won't leave. I will stay here. I'm old and weak now. I cannot continue this work. But if anything happens in this village, you can call my disciple to handle it." This disciple was my uncle. The villagers were relieved to hear this, but my uncle was sad. It meant he would have to part with his master. Until now, he had always been by his master's side. They had always worked together, but now Fei Bei had decided to stay there for the rest of his life. My uncle thought that this was a good thing, because if the female demon returned to take revenge on the village, his master would still be there to fight it. But now my uncle had to say goodbye to his master because he had to return to live in Samao. On the day of their parting, both Fei Bei and my uncle cried a lot. In the years that followed, my uncle spent almost 42 years practicing the teachings of the exorcists. However, one day, when he was already elderly, the female demon from 45 years ago returned and came looking for him. It's unclear how fate had twisted its course, but one day, while my uncle was in the forest, he saw it hiding there. When my uncle encountered it, he suddenly heard a voice in his head. The voice said, "It's better to die with honor. Die for righteousness. Die for helping others. This is the death of someone who practices the way of the exorcist. If you die out of fear, that is not the death of one who practices the way." These words gave my uncle the determination to confront and fight the demon once again. However, at that time, my uncle had a young daughter, only in her teens. She was still very innocent and unaware of the situation. On that day, after much contemplation, my uncle decided he had to confront the demon. But before doing so, he knew that whether he succeeded or failed, he would not survive. It was the fate of a master exorcist. So, before the day of battle, my uncle prepared a talisman for his daughter, which he placed on her to block her energy, protecting her from the demon's harm. Then, he took her around the neighborhood and spoke to the villagers. "This is my daughter. If anything happens to me, please take care of her." The villagers were puzzled, wondering why my uncle was saying such strange things. After taking his daughter around the village, they returned home, and it was already dusk. Before going to bed, my uncle gave his daughter one final piece of advice. "Those who die for righteousness, for the way, for helping others, that is the true death of a practitioner. But if anyone dies out of fear, they're not true practitioners." My uncle continued, "When practicing the way, one must cultivate the heart and be calm. Only then will the talismans be effective. If you go astray, hurt others, or act with evil intent, then you'll be punished." After their conversation, they had dinner, and my uncle prepared to face the demon. The battle that followed was never fully told by Aunt Hai, as only my uncle knew the full details, but in the end, he managed to subdue the female demon. It took a lot of effort, and my uncle knew that the end was near. That night, after the battle, my uncle returned home, lay down to sleep, and that was the last night he would ever wake up. He passed away peacefully, and that marked the end of our first story, a dramatic tale of two masters fighting to defeat evil. This next story also involves talismans and is related to spiritual connections. It was sent to me by a young man who also shared with me a previous story that I had told in episode 134. The story in question is titled Dan Bo Voi Ma, Making a Love Affair with a Ghost. The young man was the victim in that story, and I will summarize the main points for you now. If you haven't heard it, you can go back and listen to episode 134. In that episode, the young man had been dating his girlfriend for a while. One night, his girlfriend started having recurring dreams about a young man who kept appearing in her dreams. This young man repeatedly told her that she had to follow him and become his lover. Not only did he appear in her dreams, but he also appeared in the dreams of the young man to warn him, saying, "You must not approach Knock because she is my wife." When the young man heard this, both he and his girlfriend were terrified, but they didn't know what to do. Your family is one that has a tradition of being exorcists, so although you're still young, you know how to make basic talismans. These are simple protective charms and exorcism talismans, not anything too advanced. You drew a few basic talismans and gave them to Knock, your girlfriend, hoping it might help get rid of the man that had been haunting her. However, despite this, both of you still continued to see him in your dreams. Eventually, you shared your story in episode 134 with Duy, asking for help from others. However, something sad happened. After Duy posted the video and the story, the next day, the young man messaged Duy and said, "You don't need to look for help anymore. We've broken up." He only told Duy that the two of them had split up without any further explanation. Then, the following events took place, which led to the story we're sharing today. You mentioned that after both of you had been repeatedly disturbed by the spirit the day before your breakup, you noticed that Knock, your girlfriend, had become very weak. So, you decided to seek help from your teacher to heal her. When you went to see your teacher, he asked you to bring a cup of water from the altar and a special talisman. You asked him to keep the details of the talisman private, so he didn't mention it. Afterward, you stood before the altar, lit incense, and performed a ritual. Once you completed your prayers, you waved the incense around the talisman and handed the cup of water to Knock. After drinking it, she fell into a deep sleep. That night, you stayed awake to watch over her, as you didn't dare to sleep. The next morning, you and your teacher set up another ritual to call the spirit and find out what had happened. When the spirit entered Knock's body, it looked at you with half-closed eyes and cursed you, saying, "I warned you already, and yet you bring my wife here." The spirit then scolded you further, asking, "Do you know you are in my house? Why are you so rude?" After hearing the spirit's words, your teacher scolded it back. The spirit softened its tone and said, "This is my wife, so I must take her with me." Despite being a spirit, your jealousy was immediately stirred, and you shouted at the spirit, "Do you believe I'll kill you?" You then grabbed your teacher's sword and a few more talismans. You chanted a prayer and struck the sword into the air, aiming at the spirit. After the strike, the spirit revealed itself. Your teacher nodded, and Knock lost consciousness. You took her back home. After a day of stabilizing her at home, Knock sent you a message the next day saying, "Don't learn about those talismans anymore. I don't like you always using talismans and spells." Before you could explain, she added, "Let's break up," and immediately hung up. You couldn't reach her after that. Then, that night, something unimaginable happened. After you lost contact with Knock, her mother called you and said, "Knock has passed away." You froze, feeling numb and unable to move. You rushed to Knock's house and found her lying there in a pool of blood. She had cut her veins with a knife and committed suicide. At that moment, you felt as if your world had ended. You cried until you had no strength left. Coincidentally, your girlfriend passed away one day after Duy uploaded the first video. The next day, you received a message from her saying you had broken up, but in reality, she had passed away. The following night, during the wake, you went to help with the funeral. Exhausted, you fell asleep next to the coffin. That night, you had a dream where Knock appeared, sitting and crying. She said, "I died because that demon came and took me." Hearing this, Knock asked for your help. When you woke up, you were shocked. "But I struck the spirit with my sword yesterday," you thought. "Why is Knock asking for my help again?" On the second night of the wake, you couldn't go to Knock's house to assist, so you had to stay home. That night, you had another strange dream. You saw your grandfather appear and call out to you. "You have to face the demon now. Open the book and draw a talisman like I taught you." When you woke up, you hurriedly opened the book your grandfather had given you. Indeed, the page showed a talisman that he had once drawn for you. Your grandfather's instructions were clear. Draw the talisman and prepare a ritual. I will return to help you. The next day, you had the time to go to Knock's house and offer incense. That afternoon, you returned home and started drawing the basic talismans. By the next morning, you opened the book again to see your grandfather's instructions. You followed them exactly, setting up a small ritual on the table with a cup of wine, dog's blood ink, and the talisman you had drawn, along with the bronze sword your grandfather had passed down to you. You set everything up, lit a candle, and opened the book to proceed. Your grandfather instructed you exactly what to do, and you followed it faithfully. You did everything correctly, and soon you saw the demon appear. As soon as you saw it rise, you asked, "Why are you harming Nock? Why did you cause an innocent death?" The demon replied, "Well, if you think you can do it, write the talisman for me again." At that moment, you held up the talisman and started to draw the seal, throwing the talismans at it. You weren't sure if they hit, but you heard a popping sound as if something exploded. Then, the demon started laughing, and you realized you hadn't struck it yet. You felt a sense of worry. Seeing the situation wasn't going well. You quickly grabbed the cup of dog's blood ink and the bronze sword passed down by your grandfather. You stood face to face with the demon, ready to fight. Exorcists fighting demons is hard to visualize because we can't see the demons. It's as if you're fighting in midair, an invisible battle. After some time, you used the remaining talismans and threw them at the demon, then used the sword to strike directly at it. Afterward, you passed out, losing consciousness. When you woke up, you found yourself in the hospital. You looked around and saw your best friend sitting next to you. You asked him, "Why am I here? How did you know I was in the hospital?" Your friend replied, "Last night, I had a dream. Someone came to me and said you were in trouble at your house. I ran here and saw you lying unconscious." When you heard your friend's description, you knew for certain that the one who came in the dream was your grandfather. Your grandfather had guided your friend to take you to the hospital. However, after this battle, you weren't sure whether Nock's soul had been freed. But one thing you were sure of was that the demon had been dealt with. What truly mattered now was that you felt sad and desperate because you and your beloved Nock were now separated by death. You couldn't be together anymore, no matter how much you wanted to speak to her. After telling your story, you wanted to remind everyone who's in a relationship to cherish each other to the fullest. Earlier, Duy mentioned that he would tell everyone about the book and the bronze sword your grandfather had left you. This is because before your girlfriend passed, you had started to dream every night about two men. One of them was about 70 years old, wearing the yellow robes of a Taoist priest, which was the uniform of exorcists. The other man was also elderly and sitting on a white tiger. You thought these dreams were unbelievable, but since you kept seeing them, you asked your mother, and she told you that the man in the yellow robes was your grandfather, and the man sitting on the tiger was your great-grandfather. Your mother also revealed that you were of Chinese descent and that your grandfather had once been a Taoist priest. One day, for reasons unknown, you went to visit your grandparents' house. Perhaps it was fate, but you ended up sleeping on the bed your grandfather used to sleep in. That night, you dreamed of your grandfather who told you, "Go to the altar, step to the right, and dig under the tiles. Take what you find to study." The next morning, you went to the altar and asked for permission to dig. After digging, you found a wooden box. You sealed the hole and brought the box back home. When you opened it, you found 2 books and a bronze sword made of coins. In one of the books, you found a talisman with a pattern, and that night, out of curiosity, you opened it. Inside, you discovered it was full of talismans, many of which you recognized as similar to the ones your grandfather had drawn. You realized that these were likely talismans used in practices like those from the LAM tradition, which is linked to the spirits in the Seven Mountains area. Later, you wondered if there were any Taoist priests in Vietnam who practiced Mao Shan, because the book was filled with Chinese characters. This dream led you to uncover the book your grandfather had hidden for you, which guided you to create talismans to save Nock. However, despite everything, you and Nock were forever separated by the boundary of life and death. You also reflected that talismans and spirits are still mysterious things. Ordinary people like us can't fully understand the hidden aspects of this world. You mentioned that this story might be hard to believe, but for those who truly understand, they would recognize its truth. For us listeners, we can simply listen and decide whether to believe or not. With that, the story ends. Before I conclude, don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel to support us. If you like this story, feel free to leave a comment below to let me know. Now, let's look forward to more great stories in the future. Goodbye, everyone.